Hi everyone, it's Lennon. I want to talk today about my witch's funeral. And this encompasses so much, so many things. But I want to preface this whole video by saying that today's video is not about where witches go when we die. So if that's why you clicked on this, then go ahead and click off. I want to talk about my magical practice. Now, I've talked about this before on the channel, but I follow a fourfold system. I do have a triple goddess in my practice. I follow the triple goddess, I guess you could say. But there were some, like in the beginning of my witchcraft practice, I realized that there was some stuff missing from how working with the triple goddess was like mapped out by other witches. And I guess it took me a while in the beginning to figure out I didn't have to do it the way it was in the books. So I wanted to come on and talk about this now because it's Imbolc time. And for me, that is when I conduct a witch's funeral for the Crone aspect. If you know anything about the triple goddess, you know that each aspect is devoted to various times on, like very specific times on the wheel of the year. And that's very much how I did it in the beginning. But then I started to realize that after the Crone, there was nothing. Like there was a big void there between the Crone and then birthing the Maiden, right? So it never resonated with me. So I started to actually try to map out what it would look like, what needed to be implanted there inside that void. And so I kind of remapped my wheel of the year, I guess you could say, only in terms of working with this triple goddess. And I started to realize that inside this fourfold system, that was a threefold system, after the Crone, there needed to be a death, a real death, and time devoted in my practice to meditate on death, because it will be something that I endure one day. So I implanted death inside my practice. So what that looks like to me is at Imbolc, having worked with the Crone aspect since Samhain, I think. Yeah, Samhain. I awaken the Crone at Samhain. It's very much a special time for me. The Samhain awakening ritual that I do for the Crone. And then I work with her for a few months, and then at Imbolc, I kill her. I give her a funeral. And then I begin my death devotion, which is what I call the fourth aspect in my practice. And then I'll work with death as its own entity until Ostara, when I basically put a little spark in the darkness that is death. And that's me birthing the Maiden, which will come at Ostara, like I said. So I wanted to give a little bit of information on what I do in terms of my Crone's funeral, and then some ways in which I have come up with, I guess, some ideas in which you could conduct your own witch's funeral, even if you don't follow the triple goddess. So let's begin. I start by mapping out what I want this year's funeral, because this is very much cyclical in nature. So it happens every year. And I map out what I want my funeral, it's like I'm faking my own death. I map out what I want the funeral to look like for that year. And usually it looks the exact same, minus or plus a couple of things. So I'll just give you the foundation of what it looks like to me. Basically, I come into sacred space. Now, I'm not like a lot of witches. I don't have like an altar. I don't have a lot of room for altars or for like a space that's like a table and a chair. I don't have that kind of space. But I have various points in my house that have special things on them that I will go stand by, or like, for instance, this is my big mama chair. It's very special to me. It is a place that I come and sit. It's a big roomy chair. It's actually big enough for two people. So I sit here in my big mama chair, and there is a like end table sitting next to it that I can put various things on as I'm working them. So I will sit usually in my big mama chair with a couple of things devoted to the crone on the end table. I basically turn it into sacred space for the purpose of the funeral ritual that I'll conduct. So what that looks like is I come in, I have a journal with me, and I bring some white candles. Usually, I mean, this could be tea light candles, pillar candles, whatever you have. I light some white candles. Now, I know that may sound weird, but for me, there's a purity in death. There's a purity in dying. So that's why I use white. So I light some white candles and I light some incense. For me, that can either be two things of incense. It could be frankincense, which always puts me in like I'm in an old cathedral feel. I don't know why. I don't know, it sounds very Catholic, doesn't it? Or an incense called spiritual, which smells like a mixture between frankincense and patchouli, but I fucking love that scent. So it's either one of the two, whichever one I'm called to light, or maybe both, whatever. I mean, I could plug it in anywhere in my living room. And then I open a journal. Actually, no, before that, let me back up a second. I do get into my garb, which is, I have gotten into a little bit of it today. Growing up, it was always told to us that you have to have two things in your closet at all times, which are called your little black dresses. You have a summer one, and hot weather one, and you have a cold weather one, right? Devoted to funerals. And even if you change dress sizes or, as you grow, you have to have those two articles of clothing in your closet at all times for funerals. So I knew coming into a funerary mindset, this funeral ritual that I'll conduct, I needed to kind of glamour magic myself up to even further implant myself into that mindset. And so I knew that I needed to wear my dress. This is very much my very roomy, pagan, peasant-y looking dress that I just adore. So I put this on, and usually it involves some sort of spiritual jewelry. It just depends on what I've been using with the crone since I've been working with her, and that could either look like my rosary or some kind of necklace that I have that has skulls on it. I don't know, it sounds very Baba Yaga, doesn't it? So I'll wear something with skulls or something that will make me really really feel crone witchy. And the last thing I use is this piece of mesh. Okay, it's just black mesh. And what I like to do is put it on my head veil-like. So I usually do this kind of like a habit, like a nun's habit. I wore one time. I was in plays in school, and I did Sound of Music when I was a teenager. And I was a nun, of course, I was part of the company. We all were nuns. And so I do know how to do a habit. Anyway, you kind of tie it back here. And so I tie it very much like a nun's habit. I don't put it over my face like this, but, that could be something fun you do. I have fun with it, but I'm also, this is a very melancholy time for me, a very sad and grieving time for me, to be honest with you, because I really do want to give myself time to grieve the aspects of myself from the last year. I'm trying to whatever, do something with this. So once I put my garb on, okay, and glamour magic myself up, okay, I come into sacred space, light the candles, light the incense, and then try to journal the bio of the crone. Basically, I do that because it makes me think of funerals. When you walk into funerals, they usually hand you like this pamphlet, and it has a picture of the deceased, maybe their birth and death date, and a little about their family life, like their bio, how many kids and grandkids they have, and then something about their sickness, like how they died. It's just something small for you to keep in honor of them, right? So in honor of the crone that I have been effectively working with the last couple of months, I give her this honorary bio in a journal. Maybe talk about things that she's done for me, some good and bad things that have come out with working with her, things like that. It's just a way for me to honor her. And then I will put on some music because like when I do my bio, I really do like to be completely silent when I do that, like all quiet on the Western Front. And then I put on some music. Now for me, that really is ever only classical, but emotionally driven classical music. This can be Gregorian chants because, like I was talking about with frankincense, I very much like to get into like this cathedral mindset. I don't know, just seems to be what makes me giddy about these aspects of this ritual. So it could be Gregorian chants. I've been known to use Lacrimosa by Mozart. There's just something about that fucking piece of music that pulls something out, I don't know, of my soul. It's like hearing that piece of music, Lacrimosa, that 3.5 minutes worth of music. It makes me think of someone taking their last breath. The angst in that. So I've been known to use that. Last year I used Chopin's Funeral March, and that was a fucking awesome experience. But like I said, it could just be some kind of emotionally driven classical piece. Like type in sad classical music and you get like hour-long playlist. So I put on some music, and then I try to get into a zone out meditative state where I envision the crone on her deathbed. Okay. Now I know that the crone there's a lot more to the crone than age. Okay. Mostly when I work with the crone, it's about embodying her attributes, which is all about wisdom, and it's about storytelling, and it's about, there's a nurturement with the crone that is a tough love nurturement. Like it's something fiercer than a young mother's love. It's a life experience love. It's an advice-giving love. I don't know. There's so much more than just age, but for the purpose of me having a death devotion for a month leading to Ostara, I needed to have a funeral. I needed to kill her. So in my meditative state, I will envision this very primitive room. Again, we're going nunnery with it. But it very much looks like a beige, small, stuccoed walled room with candles everywhere and a small bed. And she's laying there with these like linen sheets, and she's got her like white hair fanning the pillow, and I'm either standing above her or sitting next to her holding her hand, and she's softly breathing, right? And I allow this vision to come about. And then inside that vision, I speak nice words to her. I honor her. I thank her for what she's done to me, or done with me and for me. Things I've learned. Anyway, I'm just talking with her, much like you would do if you were sitting with people on their deathbed, okay? And she may or may not speak back. I've had her talk before, but sometimes she doesn't. Most of the time, it's just about me envisioning her last breath, this older aspect of myself, right? So anyway, that's very much what this vision how it plays out for me. So anyway, I may get pulled, and visions can adapt this way in a very abstract way, but you can follow strings that lead to other visions inside of a vision. Okay, it's very much kind of like path working, to be honest with you. But when I have this vision of this room, I may get really, really sad in the vision and then have to walk out to compose myself, right? And then I end up opening the door to this like garden, right? So it's about allowing the vision to adapt, right? To where your mind is going. Because there could be some gold there. There could be some things that you need to pay attention to. And so anyway, I let the vision come, and then as I come back out of the meditative state, I journal about my experience. Maybe I'll paint that garden. Maybe some more poetry will come out. Maybe a closing ceremony poem will come out that I have said before, like at the very end. It's kind of like closing the circle kind of a thing. So things like that have happened to me. And so like after I journal about the experience, maybe some creativity pops out of that, which has been a beautiful experience. But for me, it's about energy transference. Okay. At Imbolc, and I have my candles going, and I'm conducting this funeral for the Crone, which encompasses the other two aspects, okay, of me the last year. And it's very honorary and very meditative and very sad. It's like sad magic. It's like sadness magic is what it should be called. I really do come out of the meditative state wanting to grieve. So I conjure up some things that will bring on the waterworks, bring on fierce emotions that will allow me to grieve. And I fully commit to this ritual. And then I like to think on, like I said before, energy transference. In death, I feel like if you don't properly give someone a funeral, I do hold some beliefs, I'm not going to get too in depth, but I do hold some beliefs that the energy gets transferred, right? But if you don't honor the deceased in a way that you think is right, then the energy kind of stagnates above the body. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I feel. That's very much where my belief lies with that. So I do believe that in giving this crone her basic rite of funeral, it allows the energy to get pulled out of her in her last breath and then get transferred somewhere else. And for me, because I work with this triple goddess, it flows back into the Maiden, which is something that I'll work on, closer to Ostara. So that's basically what my witch's funeral looks like. Now on to how you why and how you might conduct a witch's funeral in other aspects of your magic. I very much think that if you are a magic practitioner that uses ritual, that there are ritualistic signatures that are left behind afterwards. And even if you commit to doing banishing spells, not rituals, banishing spells to get rid of the things in your magic practice that are no longer serving you, and you still kind of feel like the energy is not dissipated fully, then it could be something that you conduct a witch's funeral for, a magic funeral for. It's basically an imaginary funeral for this aspect of your magical practice. Because let's just say that you've had a shit day, that you were rushing it and it was like, oh, it's a full moon, or it's no longer serving me, it was rushed, I'm having a shit week at work, whatever. And maybe that spell, and you didn't even know, you really don't even know at first, but what if it starts to feel like that didn't work, or if it backfired, right? And you find yourself like 3 months in a row banishing the same thing, right? That would be an instance that I sit with self and go, okay, I need to officially kill this damn thing. Like, splat on the pavement. And what that could look like is you could actually use real things in terms of this witch funeral. You could use poisonous herbs. Like you can make a poisonous tea not to ingest, okay? Not for you to ingest, but for you to maybe use as ink on paper. Use that poisonous tea as ink to write out the funeral pamphlet, all right? And then inside the ritual, allow the energy that is still kind of stagnant to get sucked in and drink the tea that's on the paper, right? And have this play out in a vision in your mind, and then burn that sumbitch. Poof. Putting it to death, giving it its funeral rite, R-I-G-H-T, and the energy dissipates fully. And then you won't have to worry about it again. right? So in those are some more instances that I would seriously consider conducting a full-on witch's funeral, which is not a spell. It will be ritual. It will be a ritual thing. So it's a way in which you can fully commit to your practice and give what you have done its honor. Because just because it's not serving you anymore doesn't necessarily mean that when you were using it, it didn't do some good for you in those moments. So it's about honoring the things that you have gone through that were part of your past self. And you're just killing it off. You're just killing it off fully as a way to honor it. And that's when the energy, I believe, it's almost like it's allowed to cross over, like that energy's like, okay, you've used me up. Thank you for honoring me. Goodbye. So I would use things like poisonous herbs. I would use things like, I guess in terms of witchy deaths, you could use specific candle colors. Like I said before, I use white because there's a purity in death. But you could also use black. You could use, like, say it's something that you've been doing that has a specific intention behind it. Then you could use the color candle that would go with that intention, like green or purple or orange or something like that. You could use tarot. I've been known to use tarot in my Crone time. I use a couple of decks. There are a couple of decks that I use for every aspect, all 4 aspects. But you could use tarot as a way to map out how and which to conduct the funeral. I don't know. That's something I'll have to think about more on. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm very much a symbol-driven individual, okay? And I wanted to state, let's go back to a little in the beginning, that when you think of the triple goddess, okay, if you're still kind of confused about why I have a 4-fold system, when you think about the triple goddess aspect, there's a waxing moon, which is the Maiden, a full moon, which is the mother, and a waning moon, which is the Crone. There is no new moon. Why has it been left out? Right? The new moon is very prevalent in magic. And it needs its place. Now, I'm not saying that the new moon means death, but for me, it represents, inside of this triple goddess, it represents the void. It represents the darkness that is death. And I drew a picture. I made this up when I first began my 4-fold practice, and I've kind of like digitalized it. So I'll put it here on the paste it to the video, if you will, so that you can see what it would look like in symbol form. That was another reason that I needed death, because there was a whole moon missing from this symbol. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about witches' funerals or even about my own practice, I'll answer them, I guess, to the best of my knowledge, the best of my personal, it's going to come from a personal experience, folks. So just, hold that in your mind. But I will be happy to hear from you if you have any questions or just something to add, something for me to think on in these terms. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope to see everyone again. Much love.